approximately 250 words. Imagine opening your eyes to a freezing dawn thousands of years ago. The ground is hard, the air bites your lungs, and your stomach is already growling. There's no fridge to raid, no pantry to open, no corner store to grab a snack. Instead, every single bite of food means a fight against the wilderness, the seasons, and even other hungry predators that see you as competition. When we picture cavemen, we usually imagine them gnawing on giant chunks of meat, feasting on roasted mammoths, or tearing into freshly caught bison. Hollywood has burned this image into our minds, the savage hunter with a club, conquering nature one steak at a time. But here's the shocking truth. That image is more myth than reality. Our ancestors didn't just eat meat. In fact, most of their survival came from things we'd hardly call appetizing today. Roots bitter enough to make you gag, nuts so hard you'd need hours to crack them open, berries that could save your life or poison you in one bite. And when it came to meat, it wasn't glamorous mammoth steaks every day. It was small scraps of rabbit, fish guts, bone marrow, and yes, even insects. The real caveman diet will probably shock you, not because it was full of rare luxury, but because it was a gritty, desperate, and surprisingly balanced struggle to stay alive. The myth of the meat-eating caveman. For decades, we've been told cavemen were pure hunters, chasing down massive beasts and surviving almost entirely on meat. Cartoons, movies, and even some history books simplified it to a brutal eat-or-be-eaten lifestyle. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Hunting large animals was risky, exhausting, and incredibly dangerous. Imagine trying to bring down a woolly mammoth with nothing but sharpened sticks, stone-tipped spears, and teamwork. One wrong move and you're trampled under thousands of pounds of muscle and tusk. Success meant a feast, yes, but failure meant starvation or death. So why do we still cling to the image of the meat-obsessed caveman? Because it's dramatic, it's cinematic, and it feeds into our love for the idea of humans as dominant hunters. But archaeologists have uncovered something far more interesting. Evidence of charred plant remains, cracked nutshells, grinding stones covered in starch residue, and even traces of ancient grains in dental plaque. That's right. While some groups did eat meat when they could, much of the caveman diet was actually built around plants. This doesn't mean meat wasn't important. It was, but it wasn't guaranteed. Some seasons brought nothing to hunt, while droughts and storms wiped out herds. In those times, survival depended on flexibility. Cavemen weren't single-minded carnivores, they were opportunists. They ate what they could find, what they could catch, and what didn't kill them. And that often meant a lot more than just meat. Roots and berries, the hidden side of their diet. If you strip away the Hollywood image, you'll see that plants were the true backbone of survival. Wild tubers, roots, nuts, and berries made up a huge portion of prehistoric diets. They weren't glamorous, but they were reliable. Archaeologists discovered grinding stones dating back tens of thousands of years, worn down by repeated use. The residues show traces of wild grains and starchy plants, the kind of carbs that kept our ancestors fueled for long treks and hunts. Roots were dug from the earth, sometimes bitter or tough, but packed with calories. Nuts were cracked open with rocks, often hoarded in small stashes to survive lean months. And berries. They were both a blessing and a gamble. Some were life-saving sources of vitamins, others were deadly. The knowledge of which was passed down through generations, and mistakes were often fatal lessons. The plant-based side of the caveman diet also explains something fascinating: why humans evolved such a wide range of teeth. Our molars weren't just for chewing meat. They were perfectly designed to grind plants, crush nuts, and mash fibrous roots. Our ancestors weren't just hunters. They were foragers, deeply connected to the landscapes they lived in. Without this plant knowledge, they never would have survived. Hunting the impossible. Mammoths, bison, and more. Of course, hunting did play a role. When cavemen managed to bring down something massive like a mammoth, it was a jackpot. That single kill could feed an entire group for weeks, provide fat for warmth, bones for tools, and hides for shelter. But here's the catch. These kills were rare. Studies suggest that most hunts for large animals ended in failure. It wasn't a steady food source. It was more like winning the lottery. Most of the time, hunting focused on smaller animals, deer, boar, and wild goats. Even then, the success rate was far from guaranteed. Imagine stalking prey with no camouflage, no firearms, and no modern tracking gear. It required patience, teamwork, and luck. Meat was prized, but it wasn't the everyday staple we imagine. Instead, it was a supplement, something to celebrate when fortune favored them. That said, the image of cavemen sharing a massive feast around the fire isn't entirely wrong. It happened, but only occasionally. And those rare moments of abundance probably became the stories passed down for generations, tales that survived longer than the everyday reality of chewing on roots and gnawing small bones. Insects, and surprising protein sources. If mammoth steaks were rare and plants filled the gap, what about daily protein? The answer is less glamorous: fish, small game, insects, and scavenging. Rabbits, rodents, and birds were far easier to catch than huge beasts, and fishing became a vital survival strategy near rivers and coasts. Nets, hooks, and spears were all part of their evolving toolkit. And yes, insects were eaten too. Termites, grubs, and grasshoppers are packed with protein, and for many hunter-gatherer groups, they were reliable and abundant. To us, it sounds unappetizing, but to a hungry caveman, a handful of crunchy bugs could mean the difference between weakness and strength. Scavenging was another overlooked strategy. Bones with cut marks show that early humans often arrived at carcasses after predators, scraping meat from bones or cracking them open to suck out marrow. To us, that sounds desperate. To them, it was smart, using every available resource. For us today. So what's the big takeaway? Cavemen didn't live on meat alone. They survived on a diverse, balanced, and highly adaptable diet. Plants provided steady calories, meat added protein when possible, fish and insects filled gaps, and scavenging meant nothing went to waste. It wasn't a diet of luxury, but it was a diet of survival, one that kept humanity alive long enough to evolve into who we are today. And strangely enough, this mix of plants and proteins might be closer to what modern nutritionists recommend than the all-meat caveman diets we hear about today. The truth is, our ancestors thrived not because they ate like predators, but because they ate like survivors. They adapted, experimented, and learned to use every edible thing in their environment. Conclusion and call to action. When you picture cavemen now, don't just imagine the roaring fires and mammoth feasts. Imagine the long days of foraging, the careful hands sorting safe berries from deadly ones, the patience of fishing by rivers, the teamwork of hunting small game, and even the gritty necessity of crunching on insects. Their diet wasn't glamorous. It was practical, resourceful, and essential for survival. And maybe that's the real shock. Cavemen didn't follow some perfect paleo diet. They followed the only diet that worked in the wild. They ate what nature gave them, season by season, day by day. And in doing so, they taught us one of the greatest lessons of survival: adaptability. If this surprised you, imagine what else we've misunderstood about our ancestors. Were their lives really as short and brutal as we think? Did they laugh, celebrate, and share stories just like us? There's so much more to uncover. So, If you enjoyed this journey into the real caveman diet, make sure to hit that subscribe button, share this video with a friend, and stick around for more explorations of the forgotten truths of human history. The past has so many secrets, and together, we'll keep uncovering them.